Chris Fuzel.
What really effect you're having is making a spectacle for the networks. You're a news producer's wet dream. Mass broken windows? You kidding me? You guys are a ratings bonanza.
What do you expect? Are we supposed to just walk in organized lines, smiling at the police and carrying puppets?
So you're the radicals, huh?
Yeah, call us whatever the hell you want. If you think it's radical, that says more about you than it does about us. As for those other protesters, they can do whatever the hell they want. They don't realize all they're doing is propping up the lie of democracy and giving these politicians an excuse to call this a free society where there is no censorship of opinion, where there is no class warfare. But this is a class war. And if they're too comfortable to fight it, then we will.
I'm actually going to go to two eyewitnesses to the shooting, Don, because we have those with us. Piaget Crenshaw and Tiffany Mitchell. They were there, and along with Tiffany's attorney, Peter Cohen, they say that they witnessed what happened that night. Tiffany, I want to start with you. You say that you did not see what led up to the shooting. When you showed up on the scene, the altercation was already in progress. But we have video that I believe you shot of what happened. Let's take a look at this, and you can tell us what you saw. What is this?
Okay, what I saw was when the cop and Michael were, like, wrestling through the window. It looked as if Michael was pushing off and the cop was trying to pull him in. Then the cop shot a fire through the window. Michael breaks away and he starts running away from the officer. The officer gets out of his vehicle and pursues Michael as he's shooting his weapon. Michael jerks his body as if he was hit. Then he turns around, faces the officer, and puts his hands up. And the officer continues to shoot him until he goes down to the ground.
Well, first and foremost, let me give honor to God and to Dr. Haynes and to Dr. Bethel for inviting us to come and to share with you our experience and our part in what's taking place in our city. In the few days that I've been here in Portland, I've fallen in love with your city. I've fallen in love because not only the landscape that give us the different topography where we can be in the mountains one minute, rolling across a bridge the next, watching some of the great changing in colors from the leaves. But more importantly, as I look into this audience, which is a representation of who you all are, I'm watching the unity of blacks and whites and Latino and gay and lesbian, male and female sitting together in unity. And if I can just say that as much as I've been asked to come and share with you all have touched my soul to the depths of it in the manner in which I cannot wait to go back to a city that is completely divided and share with St. Louis how far behind we are. And so if I never give you anything, I want you all to know that you all have given me so much hope already that in 2014, the dream of Dr. King is yet alive here in Portland, Oregon, and for that you ought to give yourselves a round of applause. I understand the scripture now that says that your gift will make room for you and put you in the company of great men, because you all are a great group of people. And so what I would like to just share with you is a few points, a few things about Ferguson. If I can simply say what launched me to the forefront when the cameras came into our city And I was crazy enough to say to Dr. Jesse Jackson and to Al Sharpton and to all those outsiders, please leave my city. And of course, you all know how news reporters are. They like controversy. And because I'm not smart enough to understand everything that comes out of my mouth, I said, yeah, I said it and I ain't taking it back. But what I was saying and what we've been saying in our city, and I'm sure you all had the same experience, is that we were tired of folks who were looking for a photo opportunity to come in with their capes on and with their armored vehicles and say a good speech, take up an offering, and then leave our city as bad as it was when they came. And so the message then and the message now is, this is our problem. This is our city. And if I can today say the same to not only Portland, but to all Oregonians and to even the rest of the world, that this is our problem. What's happening in St. Louis and in Ferguson, that little city that really had no recognition until now, it belongs to us. But if I can clearly make it known when I say us and our, I'm talking about we, the people. It is a phrase that we can find in the preamble of our Constitution that starts with those words, we, the people. What happened in Ferguson? It's not necessarily what we're waiting for the decision to come back from. It's not necessarily the leaks that have been given about who shot first and who did what first. What happened is there was a disconnect. There was a disconnect from two human beings being able to communicate properly. And let me say this as I sit down and do whatever is next. St. Louis has a race issue. America has a race issue. How is it that a man can kill 2 state troopers in the state of Pennsylvania knowing to be armed and dangerous, and he is going to see his day in court? But a young man who had no weapon and had his hands up was shot like a dog in the streets. We have an issue. And what has to happen is what has been taking place today, what took place when Dr. Haynes prayed for us, is that those of us who have similar issues must join forces with each other we must tell everyone who stands in positions of power that we're not going to take it anymore.
Please remember again, these are questions, not comments, so please make sure that your question is a question and also is brief. And if not, I will try and lovingly redirect you.
Amen.
So we got to stay focused, y'all. So does anyone have a question that they would like to come up and say into the microphone?
Thank you very much. Give an honor to Dr. Haynes, Dr. Bethel, and community members. Pastor, appreciate your words. My question is, looking forward, the data identified that during the Obama initial election, 68% of folks in the general population came out to vote, but yet when the mayor of Ferguson ran, it was less than 2%. So what is the strategic plan to get folks elected into the city council so that they can direct policy?
Thank you for that question. We've already began the process. As you all know, we have an election coming on Tuesday. We've already identified 3 city council seats in which we can take back. And Ferguson is one of 92 different municipalities in the county. From here to the back wall, if you were driving down the street in St. Louis, you will go through about 3 different municipalities. we're going to start now to try to take back one municipality at a time, strategically finding seats that have gone unchallenged, finding seats that is misrepresented, as in Ferguson, where there's only one African American on the council of a city that is 70% black. But it's not their fault, though, because the last election that was held in Ferguson, only 6% of the people came to vote. So the first process that we've done is we've gone throughout the city and educated the community at large. We've been in the schools and we've talked to the seniors who are eligible by age to vote. We've registered over 6,000 new voters in the city. One of the things that we've tried to do is raise funding to have transportation, that on election day we can go and pick folks up, take them to vote, and then take them back home. Unfortunately, we didn't get the funding for that, but we've had volunteers who have given their service, who will give their service on Tuesday to pick folks up and take them. And so we're educating the folks at large. We're getting them registered to vote. We're actually causing them to go vote. Let me tell you something else interesting that the Lord gave us. It's kind of like accountability partners for Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. With the system being set up the way it is with all 92 municipalities, it's so easy for a young man to become a felon simply by running a stop sign. Because the system is set up so that you can become a victim of running a stop sign, and about 5 or 6 fines later you are a felon, which takes your right to vote away. And what has happened is a lot of folks have the desire to vote. And so what we've done is we've gotten those felons and we've partnered them with persons who can vote. And their job, since they cannot vote, is to educate those who can vote on the policies and the procedures and people that are running. And so they're vicariously voting through someone else. And so it's not only a plan, but the plan is already in action. And so with your prayers, we'll be able to implement change very soon.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to one of the written questions from Marilyn Keller, actually. So it says, I was in St. Louis in September. I observed no cohesion within the community on this issue. Has anything changed?
Switch. I actually crack jokes a lot. Marilyn, your observation is dead on. It was dead on. St. Louis is the most segregated city I've ever lived in. I was born and raised there, but I've had the pleasure of going to college in Baltimore, working in California, living in Colorado, and so I've visited our country. St. Louis is still black and white. And we're probably raised to be divided. It's just part of our culture there. So what you saw was what I've deemed the leapfrog theory, where organizations have popped up and sprung up, and we're watching to see what one person does so the next day we can leap over them and do something better and different. But the first thing I learned by hanging out with Dr. Bethel and Dr. Haynes is without a coalition, without a collaborative effort, the Department of Justice, every 92 municipalities, and every person in power that doesn't want change, they're going to always win. And so I'm going back and dedicating my life to go sit with the NAACP, the Urban League, the 100 Black Men, the Latino community, the Caucasian community, the Muslim, the Jews, the blacks, the white. I'm going to go make it my business to meet with every last one of these organizations and saying we have got to follow the example of Portland, and we've got to come together to fight a common enemy. So the second part of your question, is it better? It's a lot better, but we got a long way to go.
So another one of our written questions. Oh, We're going to just take 2 written questions and then do 1 oral question so we can kind of, but we will get to you. I got my eye on you. So this is from Donna Maxey. There were rumors that, quote unquote, paid outsiders were the instigators in the riot in Ferguson. To your knowledge, was this true? How were you able to get the community to take back their peaceful protest?
Absolutely, it's true. If you study the history of struggle, there's always going to be plants in the midst of struggle to take the focus off peace. Particularly, and I don't have a problem saying this, there's a particular organization, because I think they do a disgrace to the history of the Black Panther Party. But the so-called New Black Panther Party and its leader, Malik Shabazz, he's a lawyer. So his purpose was to come in and create a class action lawsuit. And we've watched with our own eyes how he will push the people towards the police so the police can respond, and then he go give his card and tell them, call me, we're going to do something about this. There's a Caucasian group called the Revolutionary Party that has been, we physically saw give Molotov cocktails to some of the protesters. And so what we've done is that we had to start planning our own folks in the midst of the crowd. I think Dr. King was smart enough to create marshals. We weren't that smart. To have marshals going along the parade route, along the route so that we can keep peace. But here's the deal. When good begin to outweigh bad, then bad won't have a home to dwell in. And so what we've done is we've taken the media and told them that you're going to start portraying the peace side of this movement and not just the chaotic side of it.
So we actually have, this woman has been waiting for a while to speak, so we can, thank you.
Y'all come to me, it'd be easier
Yes.
on my feet.
Please help Reverend Jackson out.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I just want to know if you're aware that, I mean, we all know of the war on drugs, that it was literally a war against us. But there was a second war that was launched around the 80s that was totally camouflaged, except for those who experienced it, which was called the war with drugs. And we have been assaulted with psychiatric drugs on our babies, our children, our adults, and they call it mental health prevention and screening. And I'm wondering if when you're making these coalitions that you step out to the folks who have been lured into this horrendous nightmare that is equally killing our children.
Thank you for that question. One of the things that this generation suffers from is the disconnect of previous generations. Those ages 18 or 15 through probably 25, these are the grandbabies of crackheads. And the problem is that the crack epidemic removed an entire generation of grandmothering. When I was raised and my mother was a heroin addict, my grandmother wasn't a drug addict. And so my grandmother was able to care for me and receive respect and responsibility and indwell a system of heritage in me. Well, now these grandmothers are strung out on drugs. And so there's a 2-generation gap because mom is sick, grandmom is sick, and great-grandmother is dead. Then they attacked us in the school with Ritalin and all of these HD, AD, ABC drugs, which if you all know anything about me, they would have gave me a heavy dose of it in the 70s and 80s. What Clergy United has tried to explain to our city is there is no one solution to this mass problem. And the problem is when someone's light bulb go out and say, oh, it's economic, they forget about the drugs. Oh, it's educational, and they forget about the learning disabilities. So we have already partnered with some medical professionals We've gone to the University of Missouri St. Louis and to Harris Stowe State College, which is a historically black university, and they've loaned us some of their resources to right now we're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder with the young folks in the middle school and the elementary school that we have adopted. Watch this. I shared this with the preachers the other day. While I was praying, the Lord said, pastors need this same care. And so psychologically, we have forgotten how much it takes for a man or a woman of God to be in the streets every day. I have a full-time job. I have 4 children. I have a church to take care of, but I was out in Ferguson. And so the PTSD is real for those of us who are in the struggle. And what we cannot do is make victories in education and ignore the economic portion, or make victories in economic portions and ignore the mental portion. So absolutely, we have done this, we will continue to do it, and we'll take any advice that you may give us of anyone you may know of. Thank you for that.
So I'm going to take a question from the card, and then we'll take another oral question. I'm actually combining 2 questions because I feel like they were along the same track. So the main question is from Jamie Partridge. So Ferguson has inspired a new unity and confidence across the nation in resistance to racial profiling and police brutality. How can we coordinate our efforts, and what do you need from us here in Portland the most in support of that?
Never ask a preacher, what do you need the most? Let's get the offering trays past them. Clergy United, we need our elders to allow us to sit at their feet the way you all have done for us here in Portland. Thank God that Dr. Mims, which is Dr. Haynes' dear friend in St. Louis, he saw what we were doing, and he came to me and he said, everything that I have in my hand, I will bring to submit to you all. It's powerful when the Bible describes that the elderly are for counsel and the young men are for war. It's a mighty thing when the elderly will come counsel the young folk and then send us out to war. So the first thing we need is the advice of our elders. The second thing we need is resources. I've taken cards of lawyers and activists in this city, and I could intend on communicating. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that we need financial support. We don't know yet how to go and write for grant money and to deal with what our established units have already dealt with and write to Emerson and to the Bill Gates Foundation. We haven't figured that out yet. We are a grassroots organization, and it really, only thing we know how to do is knock on doors and beg and ask, and then give a report of what the money will go towards. And then we need, if not more important than anything, we need your prayers. We need your righteous prayer, so that, as the scriptures describe, much can be availed. And then we need you all to be aware and be wise enough to look beyond the rhetoric that is spoken of about our city, and remember how they did the same thing to you, how they lied about the reality that you all face, and then think about us and think about how you felt when you were going through this thing. And then somehow on social media, through regular media, through a phone call, through a scream to the heavens, find a way to connect what you all have gone through, what you're going through, connect it in the atmosphere to what we're going through. Because I believe that in the higher realm, when we unite in the higher atmosphere, the enemy cannot have victory when we do that.
This young lady said that was her question, so.
Hi, I have a question about a group named Lost Voices, and I'm not sure if you know them or you work with them, but when I was in Ferguson with a couple other people in this room on August 30th and we marched, this group was particularly vocal, particularly passionate, and they had a chant that was, they think it's a game, they think it's a joke. And so my question is, what is your experience with Lost Voices? Can you speak to their place in the struggle and working with them, but also this sentiment of people marching and thinking it's a game and thinking it's a joke, and just kind of treating it as you were saying, like a photo op? And so what can we do to make sure that people realize it's more than a photo op? Those are 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I am very familiar with the group Lost Voices. Let me start off with the good. I think it's wonderful that these young men and women have gotten together and organized. And let me tell you, they organize by themselves. I personally just have an issue when you title yourself Lost, because that has a lot to do with who you are and where you are. They're angry, rightfully so. They are sometimes misguided, but I love their tenacity and their refusal to bend to the extent. I learned from dealing with this young group that none of us have a right to tell them how to scream, to teach them how to grieve, or to even teach them or tell them how to fight. In a struggle of the magnitude that Ferguson is, none of us, because we're so separated, can identify with everybody's issue. And so that's why you have the pockets of groups forming. What I like about the Lost Voices is that they decided that we're going to sleep outside until folks hear our cry. And they did it the first few days with no support. It took organizations like us who realized that as it were raining, they were sleeping outside. We offered them tents. And other organizations that realized that they hadn't eaten or couldn't have eaten if they were sitting in this space for the last 24 hours. And they began to bring them food. And then as the police moved them, because they said they were loitering, and moved them, there was a business in the area that offered his space so that they can stay there without being harassed. However, as I've learned, because trust and believe, I've been angry as well. I've learned that, as Dr. King's group taught us, that you cannot negotiate as an unequal. And in order for us to sit with the mayors and the leaders, they had to see us as equals. And I believe what the Lost Voices has failed to do as of now is to find a level of equality so that they won't be misunderstood and that they can have the opportunity to be heard. And to take that anger and formulate it in a fashion that you can always be angry, but you have to be heard. And what has happened is, in the times past, is their anger superseded their voice. And so my prayer for these young men and women is that somehow they learn to put their anger to the side when it's time to communicate, because nothing is going to be done. There's 2 sides to this. You know, some people think that this is a revolution. This is not a revolution. This is a change that we're trying to take place. It's more of it's not, because with a revolution, the entire masses of people have to be on the same page, and you have to overthrow the government. It's a negotiation in which we're asking and making demands to people who necessarily don't have to give in unless the pressure is properly pushed on them. And so the Lost Voices need to continue what they do because they are very valuable to this cause. The fact of the matter is they continue to march. They've taken their marches from Ferguson, because you all can imagine we've had more than Mike Brown be killed by the hands of cops. Okay, we've had several young men since Michael Brown's death. So they've taken their cry and their voice to other areas of the city, and they are getting the attention of those who are in charge.
So we're just going to give 2 more questions to our speaker, and then we're actually going to have a local panel join him to talk and make connections between what's happening here with these larger conversations. So I'll take 1 question from the card and then 1 more question from the audience. So this question is from Nick. Reverend White, you mentioned the LGBT community. How do you see their role with the church in this struggle?
I've been pastoring for 5 years. served as an associate pastor for 7 years prior to that. Of the 12 years of leadership in the church, I have to humbly submit and say I probably spent 10 years changing those locks that I spoke of. I don't know if the platform of dialogue in my city has been embraced to really be able to answer that question fairly. What I have learned in the last 2 years in sitting down with some ministers and pastors in the LBGT community is that there is just as much common ground in their struggle as it is in ours. But just like any group, how we can help one another is not deal with where we're different, but unite where we're the same. And then eliminate that adversary that keeps us from focusing. Sister saying, keep our eyes on the prize. Is when we find out where we are the same, and if we focus on that prize, then it'll just eliminate one more headache for both of us. So what we can do is start to listen and dialogue and communicate with the community at large, and then really open up our doors and allow them free access to the churches, and quit being so ignorant. And I'll leave it at that.
And just before we take this question, I just wanted to note too, we have some members I know here in the audience from Black PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, as well as Black Pride, which is an organization of LGBTQ folks who are Black. So I think one of the important pieces would also be acknowledging the fact that these are not separate communities, right? There are LGBTQ folks in our communities. We're not being allies, right? We're actually talking about how do we embrace and support our entire community.
Hello, my name is Minister Dr. Audrey Terrell, President of the Portland NAACP, and this is Reverend Marva Edwards. She's also President of the Portland NAACP. First, I'd like to say, Vancouver. First, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Bethel and Dr. Haynes for your efforts here. Thank you, Pastor White, for coming here. I just have a really quick statement and question. A question, okay. In the past several months, Pastor, there has been an increase in membership, youth membership with the NAACP. I am very sensitive to youth. With them, I've been trying to do what I can to allow them to hear their voices. So we've had rallies, meet and greets. They're going to training sessions with the police department. We just was at Washington State University on yesterday for 2 days. I'm asking you, what are some of the things that I, personally, as presidents, that we can do for these youth to first hear their voice so their voices can be heard, train and mentor them so whatever they do, their conduct is acceptable, and at the same time to encourage their participation in coalition building?
Amen. Thank you for that question. I'm a youth preacher. The first thing I learned to do is quit listening to my constituents who told me that it was dangerous to deal with the youth. My church is in the hood. About 2 weeks ago, my church got vandalized and was broken into, and they completely robbed us of all of our equipment and all of that things. And my friends said, "I told you so." That was like on a Friday or Saturday. Sunday morning, we had service. On Monday morning, I had an open forum for the youth to come back to the church. When I invited all of my friends who are preachers, I told them, do not come if you can't handle a curse word being said in the church. Do not come if you can't stand the stench of marijuana. And don't come if you're scared, because these are going to be Crips, Bloods, gangster disciples, gangbangers, drug dealers, and folks who are saying they are ready to die and kill. In other words, what we've done at Peace of Mind and what we've done in Clergy United is that we first gave them a platform. And we did not tell them anything. We listened and allowed them to tell us what they wanted and what they needed. When we were able to take that approach, it became easier to say, you don't know what you're talking about. Because they trusted us enough, because we came to where they were, same way Christ did. And so my encouragement to you all is, what I've asked my local chapters to do is stop making the NAACP so historical and make it right now.
Good evening, and thanks for your patience. I'm a little late getting up here, so I have a statement at the very beginning here, and then we'll be happy to answer some questions when we're finished with that. On August 9th, Michael Brown was shot and killed by police officer Darren Wilson. Within minutes, various accounts of the incident began appearing on social media, accounts filled with speculation and little, if any, solid, accurate information. Almost immediately, neighbors began gathering and anger began growing because of the various descriptions of what had happened and because of the underlying tension between the police department and a significant part of the neighborhood. The St. Louis County Police conducted an extensive investigation at the crime scene, at times under very trying circumstances, interrupted at least once by random gunfire. Beginning that day and continuing for the next 3 months, along with the agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation at the direction of Attorney General Eric Holder, located numerous individuals and gathered additional evidence and information. Fully aware of the unfounded but growing concern in some parts of our community that the investigation and review of this tragic death might not be full and fair, I decided immediately that all of the physical evidence gathered, all people claiming to have witnessed any part or all of the shooting, and any and all other related matters would be presented to the grand jury. Eyewitness accounts must always be challenged and compared against the physical evidence. Many witnesses to the shooting of Michael Brown made statements inconsistent with other statements they made and also conflicting with the physical evidence. Some were completely refuted by the physical evidence. As an example, before the results of the private autopsy were released, witnesses on social media, during interviews with the media, and even during questioning by law enforcement, claimed that they saw Officer Wilson stand over Michael Brown and fire many rounds into his back. Others claimed that Officer Wilson shot Mr. Brown in the back as Mr. Brown was running away. However, once the autopsy findings were released showing that Michael Brown had not sustained any wound to the back of his body, no additional witnesses made such a claim, and several witnesses adjusted their stories in subsequent statements. Some even admitted that they did not witness the event at all, but merely repeated what they heard in the neighborhood or others or assumed had happened. The duty of the grand jury is to separate fact from fiction. After a full and impartial and critical examination of all the evidence in the law, and decide if that evidence supported the filing of any criminal charges against Darren Wilson. They accepted and completed this monumental responsibility in a conscientious and expeditious manner. It is important to note here and say again that they are the only people who have heard and examined every witness and every piece of evidence. They discussed and debated the evidence among themselves before arriving at their collective decision. After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision. They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Let's go! Come on, let's go! Let's go! going to walk through the crowd to get a little closer and see exactly what's going on and how people are really feeling about it. You just heard some emotional speeches about people. And so people are tired. It's just has to time. It's just has to change. What's your sign all about?
Oh, well, it's about having justice for us all. We should all get justice under this system. And for a cop to go that aggressively with an unarmed human being, a kid, it's very un-American. He should have been fired. There should be accountability. And it has to stop right now. And that's why I'm here with my daughter to participate and demand justice.
How do you feel, young people feel about what's just going on right now with this young man's life? And then
It's sad to see that this is still happening. I mean, our lives really do matter, and people need to know that. We're here for a reason, and I just feel like this is a topic that has been going on for ages, and I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. We need justice.
We need to start right now. Do you have a comment you want about the story that's going on, young lady?
Yeah, I also believe that these killings need to stop. They're a direct, result of racism, and until Black Lives Matter, we're not going to stop, and I won't stop.
We're going to get a little closer. We can see that people are very emotional about what's going on today. So we're going to get as close as we can. A great deal of people out here today, and everybody's in unison about keeping your eyes on the prize. We got the Reverend J.W. Friday. Reverend, what's going on in America? Can you speak to us a little bit?
What's going on in America is the audacity to, because of the worldwide media today and the way that it's set up, we have seen the injustice, not only with Michael Brown, but we've also seen from the actions of the police in particular. We need to really take a look at this and not fall asleep. Don't get caught up in what the diversions, calling Bill Cosby out and all that. Don't get caught up. It's standing time. It's time to register. It's time to vote. It's time to get out there and elect some real officials that have a real feeling and a real love for the true community. All these other fake politicians, their time has run out. It's the changing of the guard. Wake up. Wake up, America is right in front of you.
The blood of Michael Brown cries out for justice today throughout this nation and throughout the world. Once again, the African American community, communities of color, mental health communities, the poor, the marginalized, citizens who love justice and democracy, hopes have been crushed by the decision of the grand jury not to indict Officer Darrell Wilson. When it comes to rendering justice and fairness to Black people, to communities of color, to the disenfranchised and the marginalized, we know from our own experience here in the city of Portland that the brokenness of the criminal justice system and law enforcement, we know from Kendall James, we know from James Chassie, we know from Aaron Campbell, we know from Pete Notice that there is no justice and fairness when it comes to a white police officer killing Black and brown and poor people and mentally ill people in the city of What must we do about it? We must go back to we must not go back to our old routines and just talk about it. No, 1,000 times. We must fight to change this broken, unfair, and unjust system. We must use these moments of injustice to be will go to the ballot box. A movement that will raise social consciousness. A movement that will mobilize and organize citizens. A movement that will work to change laws and change the system and change the soul of America.
Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon stands in prayerful solidarity with the people of Ferguson, Missouri, in the wake of yesterday evening's grand jury decision. We pray in this time of serious tension, a tension that we have known here in Portland. We pray for all of us, and we pray for all of them, the citizens, the people on the street, the demonstrators, law enforcement officials, and justice seekers. It's our hope that this tragedy will be a transformative moment, deepening our awareness of the racial divides that do exist in our communities. As Michael Brown's father stated, "I do not want my son's death to be in vain. I want it to lead to incredible change, positive change, change that makes the St. Louis region better for everyone."
I want to ask those of you who identify as white, raise your hands right now. Okay? Take a look, because we need you. Right? This is a struggle that affects us all, and it's going to take us all, because the fact of the matter, to quote W.E.B. Du Bois, a system cannot fail those it was never meant to protect. Right? This is not about a few bad apples. Right? It's not about a bad barrel. It's about the barrel makers. So I want to call out to you, most especially to the white people who can have the privilege of going back to normal lives. I want to challenge you. This is your moment. Yes. This is your moment to step up, to not take over, to listen, and to walk with the people most impacted by this.
We're with the NAACP members, and we're going to just have them talk a little bit about what's going on, about the lack of indictment.
Well, it's a tragedy that once again America has shown its disdain for black life. We have seen that there is no justice in America for folks who do not ascribe to the dominant culture, and that it is time for us to rally, to come together and show our support for one another and advance social justice changes that reform safety and public policy in this nation.
You're the vice president of the NAACP?
Yes, I am the first vice president of the NAACP for the city of Portland, Unit 1120.
And I said we have Madam President, the president of NAACP.
Yes, I'd just like to say I've been on the phone with the president of the NAACP, and we are outraged. He talked to every unit at one time, telling us the importance that we need to come forth if ever was a time, so we can get our voices heard, and these youth can be protected. We can address the issues of police or racial profiling. The time is now. We are sincere in our efforts to bring awareness to the public that we are outraged on the indictment of everything that occurred, and we will be protesting and listening to the youth and getting them all involved in what needs to be done to protect their rights and keep them alive. So we are glad to be at this protest, and we're glad, and we will be visible. The NAACP will be visible in this community, not only in Portland but across this country, voicing on the circumstances that we will not tolerate what's been happening to our youth.
Matter of fact, you have some youth here. How do you young men feel about what's going on right now in America?
It's very important that the youth continue to fight for what's right. We fought before, we know what to do, we've seen it before, and it's very important that we continue.
If we don't say anything now, no one's going to do it for us.
Good evening, everybody, tonight. My name is Baki Coles, and I go to Jefferson High School. I'm from Southern California. As a sophomore. I'm a junior now. I am the president of the BSU. We have been working together to find world peace. And I wrote a little monologue today because I like to freestyle, but I figured I'd collect my thoughts. We're here today not only for the justice of our fallen brother Mike Brown, but for the justice of all our fallen brothers and sisters who cried for help and they were never heard. We rally, we protest, we voice our opinion, and yet I fear the list of our fallen brothers and sisters will still grow. I cannot accept that. I can't accept them justifying the murder of another human being, let alone children. I go to school full of potential targets. I am one myself. But I cannot accept that this is just the way things are. Going up to this point, I've had to accept being told not to question why we don't get the necessities of living a peaceful way of life. For too long, I've had the perspective that our history ends with slavery or is separate from Africa, the motherland. But my ignorance to the truth that African history is human history is not my fault. The youth of this nation, the future of this nation, is dependent on a system of schooling that has no interest in teaching our true history. They would rather teach the conqueror's history, no interest in teaching us knowledge of self. They would rather keep us angry for the sake of the prison industrial complex. There's no interest in teaching us economics or finances, but we're supposed to know these things to survive in the capitalistic society. We need to stop depending on this system that doesn't have our human necessities in mind and would rather brag about the little things they do to help instead of addressing the elephant and donkey in the room, which is... And until we can unite as a planet to achieve the basic human rights we deserve, we will always face oppression. Every bright mind in this crowd, on this earth, has the capability to lead us out of darkness. But until it takes every bright mind to lead and do so for us to brighten up the world around us. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
The same stuff every time?
Every time.
It's the same stuff.
The same time. They work against the poor, they work against the working class, right? I mean, every system that we have in place works against the working class and the poor, right? They're the same people.
And it's time for the people to come together and make a change, huh?
I would say it is.
It's time.
I would say it's time for a change.
Go ahead and tell us why you're here. There's a camera right there. Look at the camera. There you go.
To support people.
To support the people?
Yes, that they matter.
Everybody matters, huh?
Yes.
Yes. And what's your sign? It says free hugs?
Yes.
Can I get a free hug then?
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. And your name is?
Devontae.
Devontae? Yeah. We appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay? Because, it starts with the young people. It starts right where you're at. Okay? Sergeants, share with us what's going on in America.
Well, that's a big question. I don't know that I can answer that. Here in the Portland Police Bureau in the city of Portland, we're really working hard to work with people in the community to bridge a lot of historical gaps between police and community members in different minority sections. And, I think our agency acknowledges and recognizes that there's a lot of historical context to the conversation today, and it matters. It matters to what people are feeling, and we're trying to emphasize that with our officers and our training and how we address our new officers and give them an understanding, especially of Portland history, when it comes to policing and ethnic minorities and how the police have interacted over the years. And there's certainly a number of examples in history in Portland that we can point to that are polarizing events. Today, everything's peaceful, and our police command folks met with members of the community, Dr. Bethel and others, to help make sure this is a peaceful, productive event for everybody wanting to attend. We defend the Constitution, we defend the First Amendment, and we celebrate that, and we want people to do it in a very peaceful way.
I noticed that your officers are on the outskirts of everything, so that kind of gives a different feeling for everybody?
I think it does. I think we recognize that sometimes our presence can inflame a situation that's unnecessary. There's no reason for us to be here other than crowd management. If it were to, like blocking traffic, for example, we're making sure cars don't drive into the crowd. But in a peaceful event, we're here to support that. Our officers are around in case there's some people that show up that are not peaceful, that want to take advantage of this positive event and turn it into something negative.
Now, what are we looking for as far as the force in training with the community now?
Our agency is working with the community to break down barriers and emphasize not only to the community but to our own officers that we are not, there's no we and them, there's no us and them. We are a part of the community, and the community tells us how they want to be policed, right? This badge belongs to the community, and a great number of our officers were born and raised here. I was born and raised here. I'm a second-generation police officer. I went to Benson High School. I went to Elliott Elementary School in the 1970s, and so my perspective on this city is long, and it matters to people like me and other people in my agency that we continue to improve our relationship.
What's going on in America today?
I think that America is in revolt, and I think that that's incredibly powerful. I think, thousands of people coming out in Portland, Oregon is just one drop in a national movement of protest, of outrage, and recognizing that, the system isn't broken, it's operating as intended, and the only change that's going to come out of it is the change that the people demand.
And you think today's lack of, last night, the lack of indictment of Officer Wilson helped catapult the people?
I think that it's become a flashpoint. I think that a lot of folks understood that he wouldn't be indicted because that's the way the system functions, but I think that folks are using it as an opportunity to come together and to find common cause and to really think about what's the systemic change that we want to happen.
And do you think marches like this and meeting like this is going to make a difference?
I think that mobilizations are incredibly important, folks in the streets, but it has to be followed up by organizing, right? Mobilization is one step, but it's that ongoing long-term organizing to continue to grow the resistance and to bring more people in until, you're unstoppable. The reality is that, Darren Wilson should have been indicted according to the law, right? Laws have always been used, I think, against oppressed people in this country and rarely for our benefit. At one point it was legal for us to be owned. That was the law. Enslaved black folks who ran away, they were violating the law. They were criminals. And it is only because they took that courageous step that I can stand here, without chains on my wrists. And so I think that we need to be focused on justice, not on legality.